Whoa, a little Sunday action with Uncle Curdy Kurt. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Oh, this I ain't gonna waste too much of y'all time. I be playing with y'all too much, man. This is Sunday. Y'all probably chilling. Y'all probably sitting in the dock of the bay, drinking Hires root beer or something. Y'all might not even be watching this. Might not even care about this live. But we doing what we do. All right, here we go. Welcome to CNN. I'm KurtKennedy.com. Let's go in, right? You see it right there, right there, right there. I'm him, KurtKennedy.com. Let's go there. Ephesians 5:11. This is how we think about this channel. We take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them, right? So this is what we do on this channel. We expose the unfruitful works of darkness. If you are of the Christian tradition as I am, did you go to church today? Was you at church today praising the Lord? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Was your pastor like hot talabu shatatabu boo boo tu shot boo boo tu da 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 da? Pastors be wilding when they do that to me. I don't know what they talking about, man. You're supposed to have an interpretation for that tongue if you even do that. Man, these people be wild. But listen, if you are the Christian tradition, we understand that the future, tomorrow's not promised, right? But the future, that day is the day of the Lord is promised. So remember the future. Remember the future. That's what we do. Remember that day. All right, let's jump into this. I'm not gonna waste a lot of y'all time because it's Sunday. I know y'all probably grilling, y'all eating some wings or something, all that, right? Let's talk about this. Let me add the title of this episode or whatever this shows or whatever I call it. It's called "Is This Really a Tough Question?" Now let me tell you what happened. I didn't preach today. I got up and I was spending time with the Lord. I was doing some other stuff. Normally I'm doing my sermon prep, getting ready. And I happened to look at YouTube. There was a video of a guy watching a video of Frank Turek, who's a great apologist. I love Frank Turek. He actually has a podcast and a YouTube channel called Cross Examined with a D. And me and Strack cross examine with no D, right? Just with an E. So I'm watching this video, and the video is entitled something like Tough Question by Atheist is Humbled by This Answer. And as I watched the video, I had a couple thoughts, and I thought, let me share that with y'all. If y'all care, if y'all don't care. I get it. But is this really a tough question? Let me ask you this. How do you answer questions about hell? How do you answer questions about hell? We're going to look at this right here. There's a video. We're going to watch a large bit of it, but I'm going to stop and give a couple thoughts because I think Frank Turek is a monster. I banged with him. But I think he fumbled it a little bit on this question. And the guy whose video was watching Frank Turek's video, he was kind of like, I was surprised that he was confused that people ask these type of questions. So without further ado, let's just go. Let's go see this. All right. Let's watch this real quick with the quickness. Let me take y'all in and let's see what they're talking about right here. All right. So here's what it says. Atheist asked tough, all caps question, but walked away humbled by this response. Spoiler alert. I don't think she walked away humbled because I don't think Frank Turek killed it on this one, even though he's a monster. This dude would run circles around me on an apologetic level, I think. But I got some smoke for anybody though. But let's watch this real quick. Let's check this out.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Anyways, my question is actually pretty simple. It's just that I generally try and be a good person. But I don't believe in a Christian God. Do you think I'm going to hell?
What do you mean by being a good person?
I try to treat other people decently and.
What do you mean by decent?
According to the standards of our society, in a way that hopefully they'll react well to me and they'll treat me well.
Okay, but society sometimes has standards that aren't good, like we mentioned.
That's true.
Society. Okay, so. Is the purpose of life to be good?
I have no idea what the purpose is.
All right, so real quick, right there, she asked, am I going to hell? Frank Turek is sharp, right? He knows it's a setup question. Most people, here's the funny thing, and the guy, it's a setup question. Am I going to hell, right? But what he does is he dances around the issue a little bit and goes into like, is she about being good and he had an opportunity right there. I think he meant, now don't get me wrong, Frank Turek is a monster. I love him. But I think he missed an opportunity right there because it's a different angle that I think we got to take when people do stuff like this. But let's keep going.
Well, then, how can I answer the question?
Well, my question is, do you think I'm going to hell? It's not what I have to.
Well, I don't think God is going to force anybody into heaven against their will.
What if I wanted to go to heaven?
Well, then you pursue God. It doesn't appear like you're interested in doing that.
Well, there's no way to prove, I don't believe there's a way that we can prove God in this life. Whatever, if there's another.
Well, let me ask you a question, Hannah. If I were to give you a book, would you read it?
Possibly.
It's yes or no.
All right, so just to be transparent, I think like this is the thing, right? And again, don't get me wrong, Frank Turek is a monster. I love this dude. But he's like, well, I don't think I can answer your question if you don't have a definition. And then he's like, well, if I gave you a book, would you read it? This is why I personally think I'm not the Lord. I'm not him. I'm probably wrong. I think he's just nervous because this is one of those questions that the answer is yes. Let's just be honest. 100%. The answer is yes. If you reject the Christian God, as she said, then yes, that's the answer. Listen, Jesus did not send his son to come to earth to die brutally for the sins, for the forgiveness of people, for people to reject it and still go to heaven. It's just you're going to go to hell if you reject Jesus. But he was kind of dancing around the issue. But then he got into a weird place, and this is what I mean. And I think there's a real simple way. I think Jesus laid out a clear pattern in the Bible when you're being trapped like this. But let's keep going.
It depends. I've got a lot of books.
Well, you don't have to read it now, but would you read it over the summer?
Maybe.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, if God exists, you seem to be kind of apathetic about it.
Yeah.
Well, why would God force you into His presence for all eternity?
Well, that's not my question. My question is about hell.
That is the difference between heaven and hell. Heaven is with God. Hell is separation from God.
I mean, if that's your definition of hell.
Well, that's basically what hell is. I mean, there's a lot of descriptors in the Bible about it. But at the end of the day, hell is separation from God.
I mean, do you think I'm going to burn for all eternity?
Well, it depends on what you mean by burn, because there's a lot of different metaphors in the Bible. Some, on one hand...
See, this is what I mean. Like, it's again, I bang with Frank Turek, right? But when you think about it, do you think I'm going to hell? Well, it depends on what you mean by burn. Like, there's a lot of metaphor. Where he goes with this, I think isn't really helpful. And it's like you dance around the issue. I think there's a much better way when you're a believer, right? And you're getting trapped like this. Like most of these people ask questions like this to trap you. They want to be able to say, look, you're unloving, you're this, you're that, right? They want to trap you, but there's a much better way to address this head on. That's a little bit, but in a way that's kind of fresh. And Jesus did that. I'm gonna show you how Jesus did this in a moment. Stay with me for a couple more minutes. I'm gonna show you what Jesus did when he was trapped like this and how he handled it. And I think it's a model for us. But I think Frank Turek dropped it on this one, but he's vicious. I banged with him, but he dropped it on this one.
You've got burning. On the other hand, you've got outer darkness. So you can't have burning and outer darkness together. They're metaphors meant to communicate destruction.
That doesn't matter.
Meant to communicate being
it's still hell, right? It's still hell.
If she doesn't believe in God, why does it matter what he thinks about her eternal state? And if she doesn't believe in God, she also shouldn't care about hell. So why is she asking these questions? Because she's trying to make the Christian look bad. She's trying to make him look condemning and intolerant so she can use that against him. Isn't it ironic that this woman claims to be a good person, yet she's using manipulation and deception to make him say something bad so she can use it against him? Yes, she's a very good person.
Was Jesus' resurrection?
All right, so real quick on that, right? So this is the video of the guy watching the video. He might be 100% right. But let me just say this real quick about that. You got to be careful with stuff like that, right? I agree. She probably is trying to set him up and to ask that question. But here's the thing, and this is where I think a lot of us, I did a video a couple days ago about being unloving. And you know what I realized? That a lot of times my unlovingness is also forgetting the biblical reality of the world that we live in, right? So you got Ephesians 6, Paul says we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, right? But against the rulers, authorities, and principalities, right? So he's saying, and then you got 2 Timothy 2:26 that says that people have been taken captive to do the devil's will. So when this guy's like, why is she even doing this? And here's why she's doing it. That's the wrong way to look at it. And I get what he's saying because it's natural. But the right way to look at these situations as believers is there are spiritual forces at work that are operating behind her, and she's lost. It's not about, oh, look how she's just trying to manipulate him. Of course she is. She belongs to the enemy. Of course she is. She belongs to the enemy. So I think we have to be careful when we're processing how unbelievers are acting. They're supposed to act that way because they've been taken captive. That's 2 Timothy 2:26. They've been taken captive to do the devil's will. We shouldn't be like, why is she doing that? I know why she's doing it, because the enemy's trying to stop the church, and that's what the job. And I think we have to stop looking at the people who are taken captive by the devil and say, man, she's doing her father's will, just like Jesus said to the Pharisees in John 8. You're doing the will of your father. You're doing the same thing your father does. We shouldn't be surprised or judgmental towards these people, because her biggest issue is not that she's not a good person, but that she's in the realm of God's wrath, right? All right, but let's keep going. What do I know? Let's keep going. Here we go.
A metaphor?
No, I don't think so, because otherwise a lot of people died for a metaphor.
So how do you distinguish between a metaphor and what's not a metaphor in the Bible?
Oh, the same way we do in normal language. Like when we say, this computer cost me an arm and a leg. You know what that means, right?
Unless somebody took an arm and a leg from you.
Yeah, if I was an amputee, but we don't. We generally understand most times when metaphors are used and when something is literal. So I don't think hell would be a nice place to go to, but even Christopher Hitchens says hell, or let me back up. Christopher Hitchens says heaven would be hell to him. He doesn't want God now, so he's not going to.
Well, I'm not Christopher Hitchens.
I know.
Bang. And this is what I mean. And it's again, I love Frank Turek. I think Frank Turek is a monster, right? But this is what I'm talking about. He starts to use other well-known atheists and challenging them. And she said, look, I'm not Christopher Hitchens. He's not dealing with what she's asking. And a lot of us, when we get this question, it's like, oh, man, we know what's going on. If I say, yes, you're going to hell, then it's like you're unloving, you're this and that. Let me just say this. Is that the worst thing, though, to be called a bigot or unloving? If you're a believer in Jesus, in all seriousness, not that there's no such thing as jerks for Jesus, right? We're not trying to be jerks, right? But is that the most unloving thing, for someone to be offended at you for telling them they're going to hell if they die? I mean, you got stories like the rich man and Lazarus and him saying, man, please tell my family don't come here. If she dies and goes to hell, she's going to wish that he had said straight up and down, yep, you're going, and this is what you do. So I feel like, as much as I bang with Frank Turek, I feel like he's dancing around the issue too much, and the video takes a long time to really get to a place where it doesn't even really answer it in the best way. Now, I'm going to fast forward the video some so you can see a little bit more towards the end, because a lot of this stuff is just like, I think it's not helpful, and then I'm going to show you where I think Jesus models how to do this, all right? So let me fast forward it a little more to the end. All right, here we go.
Comment on every single miracle, and that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're doing here today, okay? So you have to look at each one on a case-by-case basis. If the greatest miracle of all has already occurred, and I haven't even told you what that is, what is the greatest miracle in the Bible? No, the resurrection is easy. The greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We've just given evidence that the first verse is true. If that verse is true, are the other verses in the book at least possible?
Sure.
Okay. So you can't philosophically rule miracles out as David Hume does, as Bart Ehrman does, as James Tabor from UNC.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't, because the greatest miracles already occurred.
I mean, it's
If God exists, miracles are
depending on
possible.
your definition of a miracle.
Well, it does. It does depend. I'm talking.
So this is what I mean. This conversation is all over the place because it's not like a smooth thing. Sorry, I'm going to stop there because most of it is like that. Let me give you a pattern for how Jesus does this in the scriptures. Let me show you what I think Frank Turek should have done. And I could be wrong. I mean, Frank Turek is monster with it. Way sharper than me, on apologetics at least, right? So, and I'm saying that only because I think it's false humility if I don't think I'm sharp. If I think like, oh, everyone's just so sharp, I'm not trying to be falsely humble. But I think on this stuff, he's sharper than me. But let me give you an example of where Jesus deals with this kind of setup and how he deals with it. And this is what I think Frank Turek could have walked her down the road simply by doing this, rather than going back and forth about miracles and quoting other well-known atheists just to show that they're wrong too, so she's wrong. That wasn't even the issue. Let me show you, first of all, let's go look at what Jesus did, right? Let me tell you the best way to navigate these types of issues, because these are questions of morality and consequences, right? Do you think I'm going to hell? She says, I'm a good person. How do you define good? I try to keep up with the standards of society and do things that will make people accept me and not reject me and stuff like that, right? So her whole premise of do you think I'm going to hell is it's a question of morality and its consequences, right? Or immorality and its that's what she's saying. So let me give you the principle first. Here's the principle, and then I'm going to show you how Jesus did this. Here's the principle. Don't defend God. Don't defend God. Ask other people to defend why they believe what they believe, right? Don't defend God. You don't have to defend God. Because we're on the side of truth. Does it really matter if she agrees with miracles and the resurrection? It doesn't. Because we're on the So don't defend God. Ask people. Let me show you how Jesus deflects from them trying to come. There's a scene where they were trying to come with morality and its consequences, and watch how Jesus deflects. And let me show you what I think Frank Turek could have done. Starting in John chapter 8, beginning in verse 2. Here's what it says. Early in the morning, he came again to the temple. Listen, I know that John 7:53 through 8:11 manuscripts don't have this in there. So please don't be like, well, Pastor Kurt, that passage may not really, I don't care. It's in the Bible that we have right now. So I'm going to use it, all right? We don't know if it should be there or not, but we're going to use it. All right. Early in the morning, he came again to the temple, and all the people came, and he sat down and taught them. The scribes and Pharisees brought a woman in who had been caught in adultery, and placing her in the midst, they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. What do you say? They said this to test him. They might have some charge to bring against him, right? So this is the same thing that this guy that we think that this girl was doing. Am I going to hell? That was her question. It wasn't, hey, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. It was, do you think I'm going to hell? That was it. And that was similar to this. Should we stone this woman? The law of Moses says this, right? She knew, asking him that question, Frank Turek that question, she knows the Bible says she's going to hell. She knows that. She knows enough about to say that. So she asked the question to possibly bring a charge against them, possibly to maybe think that. Now, obviously, the enemy's at work here, but it's the same setup. Morality and its consequences, all right? Let's keep going. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, let him who is without sin among you throw the first stone at her, right? And then it says this, and once more he bent down and wrote on the ground. And it says this, but when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. This was a master class of how to handle when people are coming at you, because let's be clear, most of the pushback that we get, why does a good God allow evil and suffering? Am I going to hell? Why does hell exist? They're all about morality and its consequences. This scene was about Mosaic law morality. This woman was caught in adultery, right? And what are the consequences are we should stone her. What should we do, Jesus? And the scripture tells us, John tells us this. They said this to test him that they might have some charge to bring against him. What would the charge be? He would stone a woman. Now, first of all, the man wasn't there. The Mosaic law actually says you bring the man and the woman. So it wouldn't have been obeying the Mosaic law anyway, but it would have been outraged that Jesus would have said, yep, stone the woman and watch them stone her, because that hadn't been how he'd been all this time. So they were trying to trick him. It's possible that she was trying to make him, as the guy said, look bad because he would say, yeah, you're going to hell. So look at the master class that Jesus did. So here's what Jesus says to them. Morality and its consequences, here's what Jesus says. Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. All right? So Jesus takes the morality that they're presenting and putting it back on them. Let's talk about your morality. Right? If you are without sin, then cast the first stone at her. That's what he says. It's a masterclass. It's like, okay, you want to talk about morality and its consequences. All right, then there's consequences for your morality. So he who's without sin, cast the first stone. They all walk away. All right. How do we take what Jesus did here and put it in a modern context? Or if I was Frank Turek, again, he's way better than me at this stuff. But if I was Frank Turek, let me tell you what I would have said to this girl when she said, am I going to hell? At the beginning, let's go back really quickly We're going to go back to the beginning just a couple seconds just to show you this. I want to show you what she said at the beginning and how it came out. And then I'm going to show you how Frank Turek, using the pattern that Jesus laid out, could have walked us through this. All right? So let me do this real quick. Let me bring it here and let me show you this. Let's take it back. Let's take it back. All right? Here we go. All right, here we go. Watch this.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Anyways, my question was actually pretty simple. It's just that I generally try and be a good person, but I don't believe in a Christian God. Do you think I'm going to hell?
Okay, so I generally try to be a good person, but I don't believe in the Christian God. Do you think I'm going to hell? All right, let's go another 30 seconds or so, and then let's walk through it.
What do you mean by being a good person?
Try to treat other people decently.
Good question. Great question.
What do you mean by decent?
According to the standards of our society, in a way that, hopefully they'll react well to me and they'll treat me well.
Okay.
All right, so she said, hopefully, he said, what do you mean by good? Great question. And she said, well, according to the standards of our society, right? So hopefully I'll act well to them and they'll treat me well, all right? Now watch where it goes after that. Watch this.
But, society sometimes have standards that aren't good.
Society has standards that aren't good, and then it goes off the rails, all right? That's not what we do. And again, Frank Turek is a monster. But this is what we do using the pattern of Jesus, all right? So let's go back real quick to the pattern of Jesus, right? Let's go back here to this. Jesus says this in verse 7. Let him who's without sin among you cast the first stone on her. He's dealing with morality and consequences. Here's what I think Frank Turek should have said. When she says, I try to be a good person, the standards of society, and so forth and all that. And he's like, well, what do you mean by good? And that's what she answers, right? Here's what I think Frank Turek should have did. I think he should have said this. So let me ask you a question. Since you have a standard of right and wrong, you're a good person. Yes. You're trying to be a good person. Yes. So you believe that there are people who are bad persons. Do you? Yes. So what makes a person bad? Okay, I don't know what she would have said, but obviously it would have been the opposite of her standards. Okay? So what you say is, okay, so you do believe that you're a good person. You're trying to be good. You do believe there are bad persons, right? Yes, I do. Okay. Do you believe that there should be consequences for the bad actions? Like, do you believe that people who commit crimes should go to prisons? She's going to say, more than likely say yes. Okay. Why do you think they should go to prisons, right? Well, because they're not good people. They broke the law. They did these things. Okay, good. So you do believe that there are consequences for not doing good in society, not having morality and not listening to the laws. Yes, I do. Okay, she's going to believe that because she's trying to be a good person. If she says she doesn't believe it, then that's when you go to, well, why are you trying to be good if you don't believe there are consequences for morality, right? This is how we deal with it, right? You're taking morality and now making her defend it because that's an illogical position, right? It's an illogical position. So once you say, well, yeah, I do believe that there are consequences for being bad, right? In a nutshell, you could easily wrap it up like this. All right. So you're trying to be a good person because you believe it's beneficial to be good. And you think that there are consequences for people that are bad persons that are not trying to be good, criminals and so forth. Yes, I do. Okay. Okay, great. That's the standard of society. Remember she said, I'm just trying to do, the standard of society is that bad people, criminals, go to prison. There are consequences for it. Sometimes even the death penalty, right? Yes. She has to agree to that because of what she said. Frank Turek, all he had to do was say this. So let me ask you a real question then. Why do you think it's okay for you to believe in consequences for doing bad things and God not have consequences for doing bad things? It would have been, what are you going to say? Now, she would have had an answer, of course. But the reality is, you take the logic and you put it on its head. It's not about, well, where's your standard of good come from? And let's go back. That stuff isn't beneficial. When people ask these questions about morality and its consequences, a lot of us, we're trying to dance around the issue, right? I don't need to dance around the issue because I know I'm on the side of truth. Believer, brother and sister, you are on the side of truth. Even if you botch it and you're not as sharp as you want to be. Even if you're like, dang, Pastor Kurt would have said it. Don't even compare yourself to nobody. Even if you mess up, you are on the side of truth. Just because many people don't believe it, Like, let me ask you a question. Is Jesus still Jesus, whether people believe it or not? 100%. Is Jesus still Jesus, whether you believe him or not? 100%. Believer, brother and sister, fear the Lord in, whatever you are, Christian, whatever you are, right? You're on the side of truth. You don't have to defend God, all right? Don't defend God. Ask people to believe. So I would have just said, okay, well, if you believe that there are consequences for not being good, which is why you're trying to be good, you want to be accepted by people. That's what she said, right? If you believe there are consequences for being bad, then why can't God have consequences for people being bad, according to his standard? Like, why are you allowed to be okay with prison, okay with, I mean, in all honesty, every human being, and this is another question I get when people be like, well, how could God send people to hell? They ask that kind of question, similar question. I just say this to people, like, listen, do you have relationship parameters? Like, if I would have said this girl, I could have said, hey, if a guy would walk up to you and assault you, would you want consequences for him? Would you want him to go to prison or whatever? She would more than likely say yes, right? Okay. If you think there should be consequences when someone breaks your relational code, like you're not going to be friends with that person. You may forgive him, but you're not going to hang out. I doubt you're going to go visit him in prison. That's just not going to happen. We all have relational standards that if people break those standards, we're done. It's a wrap. We may forgive you. But we may not trust you. We may not be able to have relationship with you. Romans 12:18 says this, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. So you can't be in fellowship with everybody. It's just a reality. Every single person has a standard that says, if you cross this line, our relationship as we once knew it is over. So this is what you say to people. And when they say, yeah, I have that, I agree with that. Then why can't God have the same standard? If you cross these lines, the relationship I had with you, or could have with you, is done. My brothers and sisters, maybe I'm an idiot, but when I've done this before, people have been like, man, I don't really know that. Because it's not complicated. It's not rocket science. And I'm not saying Frank Turek did this because he's brilliant. But I think when we get these questions, we're afraid of being called unloving or bigot or whatever. Look, the Pharisees told Jesus he has a demon. He wasn't tripping. Call me a bigot, call me a racist, call me whatever you want. Just don't call me stubby. I don't care what you call me. You call me whatever, because I've been called worse, right? But you know what I want? The worst thing you could be called is I don't know you. You don't belong to me in front of Jesus. That's the worst thing that anyone could be called. Call me anything else except for I don't know you. You're not a child of God. That's the worst thing. I don't want to hear from Jesus. So I'm saying all this to say, and wrap up. When you're in these situations where there's morality and consequences, don't defend God and be like, am I going to hell? Especially the hell one. Always push back like, hey, do you believe there are consequences for right and wrong? Right? Of course everyone does. There's not a person, if they say, no, I don't believe in anything. So you don't believe that people who commit crimes should go to prison? You don't believe that people who assault little children should go to prison and get locked up? You don't believe that? Of course people are going to say yes, they do. Once they say yes, they do, they're trapped. Because you're saying you're allowed to have consequences for wrongdoing, but God isn't. A little Sunday with Uncle Curdy Kurt. I love Frank Turek. He's a monster. I just think too many of us get tripped by this stuff. It's not that complicated. We're trying to defend God, or we're worried about, listen, let me say this lastly. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to close. That's pastor talk. I'm going to close. Let me just say this. Everyone is made in God's image, every human being. And because we're made in the image of God, we all have a desire to do good things. They can't earn us salvation. But we all have a desire. This is why people go to Africa to go to doctors who want to heal people and build wells, and because everyone has a desire to do something good. People want to know what's the meaning of life, right? They want to do something important in life. Why? Because they have a God-sized hole. There is an eternity within the heart of mankind that God has placed in all people. So no matter what, unless there's a serious chemical imbalance or like a serial killer or something that's wilding, the reality is most people, 99.99% of people want to be good, right? Which means they think that there's people that are bad. Whenever they try to make you feel like you are wrong for believing in hell, show them that actually you believe in consequences for bad character too. And if I'm wrong, then you're wrong. Or why can't God have consequences if you do? Well, I don't believe in God. Okay, well, you asked the question. You asked the question. All right. Sunday, get it. Don't let nobody scare you with this stuff, man. Uncle Curdy Kurt, let's go. Let's get it. I will see y'all. I probably got something for y'all tomorrow. Let's go. Thanks for watching. Go ahead, KurtKennedy.com. Go there, right there. Go to the live stream. All that. With a super chat at. With a like and subscribe. Do something. Do something for your boy. All right. Love y'all. Grace and peace. Remember that gift, that meme? Don't be intimidated. You have the truth on your side. And even if you can't answer the question well, you have the truth on your side if you are a believer in Jesus. Don't let anybody, even if you mess it up, make you think otherwise. Make them defend what they believe and show them, that's actually a logical fallacy. All right? All right, great.